Well, I'm really excited for this month's episode of the Alberta Wedding Podcast because we're going to talk all things florals. And although it's still February, I'm wearing my most floral shirt. If you can see it on YouTube here. Sorry for those who are listening to this, you can't see it, but definitely go to YouTube and watch this episode because I've got Travis Mills with Calyx Floral Design on here. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
Great. I'm so excited to have you on because obviously we've done a lot of work together over the years, done a lot of weddings, and most recently we were both part of the open house at Archway Manor back in September. And oh my God, like the florals, like you honestly blow my mind every single time. I don't know how you do it, but you knock it out every time, and you just I'm really excited for this conversation because I know there's a lot of folks, both from the client perspective and also like vendors, that we also work with that just love and adore you. And so they were really excited to hear that you were coming on the podcast, and I'm excited to have you here. So, with that being said, I would love to hear how you got started in floral design, and we'll get into weddings, but I'd love to hear your origin story on how this all began.
Okay, well, apparently floral design is in my blood. It's been a time. When I was in elementary school, there was a tiny little flower shop across the street from my elementary school. And the first job I had in a flower shop, I was a clown. I dressed up in a clown suit and I wore a sandwich board and I stood on the highway. Now, this is like 12 years old. I did this. I don't
Seems
think that would
legit.
be allowed now, but anyway, it was allowed then. Way up in northern BC, I stood on the side of the highway and I advertised for flowers from this little flower shop after school and on weekends. So that's how it started. But I'm the person who goes for a walk and I stare at the ground, not at the things around me, because I'm looking for flowers. I always love flowers. I tried to deny it for a while. I went to university. I actually have a teaching degree. I was a teacher for a few years.
Oh, wow.
Um, and while I was teaching, while I was in university, I paid for university by working in flower shops.
Going back to your roots, literally your roots.
Exactly. And then while I was teaching, I started actually doing weddings on the side. So in the summer, when I wasn't teaching, I would do a couple weddings for friends of mine and for other people I knew, and then it became a little bit of a business. And this was 18 years ago that actually started. And then I got to the point where I was getting so many wedding requests that I cut back my teaching. And then eventually I quit teaching altogether. I gave up like a very stable job. I was an art teacher. I used to teach floral design. I really had the best teaching job out there. Gave that up to do floral design full time. And then about, I guess, 6 years ago now, I opened up my first retail location, and it's just been the best good time since then.
Wow.
Sorry, that was a
Uh,
very long explanation.
no, I love that. It's so cool how no matter what path you were going on, it was always going to come back to florals, and it was something like it was in your blood, like literally.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty cool. I want to go back because obviously, you know, you're not in northern BC anymore. You're located out of central Alberta in Red
Yeah.
Deer. How how did that transition from BC to Red Deer? And were you teaching in Red Deer or in BC?
Oh, so I moved from northern BC when I was about, I finished high school there. So 18, I moved there, lived in Vancouver, worked in flower shops in Vancouver for a while. Ended up in Calgary, went to university there for a bit, and then to Red Deer. And I've been in the Red Deer area anyhow now for about, I guess, just about 20 years now.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So as you were going through these different phases of your early life, what was it about the florals and just being around flowers in general that really spoke to you? Like, obviously, it means a lot to you more than just a petal, right?
It's true. To me, it's art. And like, while I was an art teacher, I love art. I love to paint. I love all things creative. And I see floral design as a form of art. And so literally I get to come to work and make art every day. And I love the fleeting nature of it. I love how it's beautiful. You make it, it's beautiful. People enjoy it and they really enjoy it. And then it's gone. And then you start again. And it's kind of, it's like, I don't know, it's a special moment. It just makes your heart so happy when you like hand a bride a bridal bouquet and she gets it. And that is her one day of those beautiful flowers. And she just like, you just see her looking down at it. It's amazing. And it just fills my heart.
I love that. When did you know, like, you wanted to take this more professionally? Obviously, you were doing this on the side and you were getting all these new inquiries while you were still teaching. At what point were you thinking, okay, I gotta like change my focus here because I can't be doing both?
Yeah. It was, I think I had over 50 weddings booked that one summer, and I was still teaching, and things, the spillover. I just didn't have time to run two full-time jobs. And I really had to make it. It was a very hard choice, but I was like, my heart's so much happier doing flowers. And so it was an easy decision in some ways. Financially, it was the scariest decision I've ever made. But you know, with it just, I'm just a much happier person now. Not that teaching isn't wonderful, and like for some people that's what fills their heart, but just creating is just so special to me.
Yeah, I know as an artist myself, don't ask me to paint something, but I can film something and make it beautiful. And so for me, it was always like coming back to this. I had a different career before this. I was a hotel manager. I went to school for that. Lost the passion. I'm very passion driven like yourself. And I had a still camera since probably since I was like 5 or 6. And so I didn't have a camcorder until much later on in my life, but I was always fascinated with just capturing moments and capturing nature and florals and botanicals and just everything that that nature is has always been something that I've gravitated to. So any chance I get to leave the city and go out and just wander and go to the mountains. I was in New Zealand last year, got to see, whole new vegetation down there that
Oh, that'd
we
be,
don't have up here. And it was so fascinating.
yeah.
Don't ask me what the flowers were called or the plants were called. Don't ask me, but it looked beautiful and it speaks to me and it ignites that fire within. Like it fills my cup.
Yeah, I
I,
completely understand that.
when you were doing those like 50 weddings that one summer, like were you working out of your basement or what was the setup like
It was
in the
out of my
beginning?
garage. I had my first cooler I bought at an auction. So I had this old rickety flower cooler that I got for 250 bucks at an auction, but hey, it kept the right temperature. It wasn't pretty, but it did the job. And I worked out of my garage. Yeah, I had some folding tables set up and hired a couple people to come and help me in my garage. And we worked that whole summer in my garage, just doing all the things. And that was back when working from home as a florist was actually quite frowned upon. Very few wholesalers would sell to me. Um, it was really hard. I found one that was willing to sell to me. I had to prove, like, send pictures of my cooler that I was actually professional and all of that. But yeah, that was kind of how I started. And then, you know, that's actually changed quite a bit in the industry. Tons of florists work from home or as freelancers. It's amazing how it's completely shifted since then.
And I'm curious to know when like what type of marketing were you doing at that time to get the word out, because obviously back then you didn't have social media like you have now. I'm curious to know how, if it was just word of mouth or what.
There was a lot of word of mouth. Wedding shows were the way to go back then. I'd get a booth at a wedding show, and then you get your face in front of a ton of brides. Word of mouth. I would take out Kijiji ads, like it was
It was
not the
our
same.
Craigslist.
It
I
worked, and it was what was great. And yeah, Yeah, and then even things like I would meet all my brides at a coffee shop. We would sit down and do our consultation at a coffee shop, and other people would walk by and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" Because I'd bring a bouquet of flowers with me, and I would get more business just by sitting in a coffee shop.
You had like a pop-up shop within the shop.
Yeah, exactly. And as long as I kept buying coffee, they didn't care. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, times have sure changed.
How would you describe your design back then? Did you have a specific, like, design, or were you just, like, creating anything and everything and really, like, curating it to each couple? Because, every wedding is different, different color palettes and just styles in general.
Yeah, I think I've always really like leaned towards like a really organic, natural style. That's just how I've always like you say, going for a walk in nature. Like I've
Mhm.
always leaned towards that kind of style. But yeah, back when I first started, the flowers that we used were very different, and even the definition of an organic style was very different. But I can still look back at things that I made like 15 years ago and be like, yeah, I could sell that today because I it was always really based on the same sort of like placement of flowers, that movement within the flowers, that sort of a thing. That really hasn't changed. Although I can definitely look back and say, there's definite trends. There was a lot of hot pink Gerber daisies in my original days, and not as many of those now. Or at least if they are, they're used in a different way. So
Yeah, and we'll definitely touch on trends a little bit later on in this episode. But I'm curious to know at that time, what was the support like from your family and friends? Because going from the stable career that you had gone to school for, and wow, you're a teacher, it's very admirable, and then not saying like being a florist isn't, but it's got a different perception out
it sure
there.
does.
And so I'm curious to know what the feedback was from your family and friends.
Well, my husband was amazing. He has always been, he's just the best. If I ever, he's always the best in terms of support. If I need anything built, or I was out at Archway Manor and got a flat tire the other day, he came and saved me. He's always like, he's great. And he has been like that since the beginning. And I honestly couldn't have done it unless he had said, yeah, go ahead and follow your dreams. Um, my kids have worked for me through the years. They're all in their late teen years now, but I had a 5-year-old son giving me a hand doing, making flower arrangements or carrying buckets. And so and like even still now, I have my kids help with deliveries and setups. Occasionally they work in the store. So it's a family business, whether they like it or not.
It's
um,
community service, right? Or something like that. I mean,
Something like that, yeah.
sure makes you standing on the side of a highway in northern BC at 12 feel like, wow, I mean, back then you had it good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear more about how over the years you transitioned into then having a physical store, like a physical
Yeah,
flower, uh,
it's
boutique. Yeah,
yeah, it's been a really neat, like, I always talk about like my business growth story. It's like the tortoise and the hare, and I'm the tortoise. I have gone so slowly. I watch some businesses and they're just, they just leaps and bounds so quickly. And I don't. I have taken everything so slowly, and probably slower than I should. Um, but I've really built it based on, am I ready for the next step? Am I ready to be busier? That sort of a thing. And so, when we made the transition from having working at home to working in the first retail store that we had. We actually were in Bauer Place, right in the mall. It actually was amazing because they had approached me and they said, "Hey, do you want to try pop up here and see if you can sell some flowers?" And I thought, well, maybe. And I had already had 10 years of customers buying wedding flowers for me. And so
which is
for
huge. I
me, it
mean,
was really
yeah.
easy to advertise and say, "Hey, you want more than wedding flowers from me? You'll come find me at the mall." And I tried to pop up over Mother's Day and sold out the first day that I was there, and I was supposed to be there for 5 days. And so I was like, "Oh, well, this might have a place." And then luckily Bauer Mall was really supportive and they opened up a market and it was like a little Christmas market. And they were like, why don't you try 2 months? Okay, I'll try 2 months. And that went really well. And then that finished and they said, hey, we have a store open. Why don't you try a store? And so I opened up a storefront right in the mall. It was great. I loved having it there. It got my name out. People saw me. Anybody walking through the mall started to know about Calyx Floral design. And then COVID. And so being in a mall during COVID is
Not ideal.
not ideal. But the location that we're in currently had actually just been built. It was a brand new empty space. There was no walls, there was no anything. And I was able to take advantage of the downtime during COVID. And we were able to access this space that we're in now. I built it exactly how I wanted. It's perfect. And we just absolutely love it here.
While you were going through all this, were you seeking inspiration or getting mentored by anyone else that you had looked up to and that was helping you along? Because obviously you have never done this yourself before. It's like there's no manual.
Yeah,
So I'm
right.
curious to know, like, if you had somebody that was coaching you along the way.
Business wise, nope. I have learned as I've gone, and trust me, I have made mistakes. There's been some tax bills, um, right? But I learned from them, and then just didn't make that mistake again, which is good. Um, that one hurt.
Yeah, it usually does.
Yep, yeah. So I've kind of learned that as I've gone. I've actually found a wonderful floral mentor. She is a luxury wedding designer out of the States. And I first went and took a course with her, Sarah from Intrigue Designs, Intrigue Events. I had taken a course from her back in, it's probably 7 years ago now in Seattle, and kind of stayed in contact with her. And then a few years ago, went to Maryland and did one of her like events there, met her, got to know her a little bit better, and again, stayed in contact with her. I've sent my staff to take courses with her. So they're kind of getting more better at design. And then she actually just recently had us come out to Orlando. So I was able
Oh
to go
wow.
out as a lead designer for her in Orlando for a Styled Sheets of America event. And it was one of their shoot crawls at this like insane golf course in Orlando. And I was able to lead a team in design there. For her, which was really, really neat. And some of the stuff we did there was just mind blowing. It was beautiful.
That's incredible. Congratulations on that. Like that's a huge accomplishment, and to be recognized and be asked to come back again and again to work on some of these huge productions. Like we're not talking, you know, your small town farm, weddings. These are huge, six-figure productions that we're
Yeah.
talking about here.
Yeah, that was a pretty incredible event. There was a bunch of teams there, and our team just like nailed it. They did such a beautiful job, and yeah, it was a really neat experience to be able to work for Styled Sheets of America because that's like they're pretty well known.
Yes, yes, they are.
Yeah, I also talked to them, and I was like, "So, what's the chance of Styled Sheets across Canada?" And she's like, "Maybe." So I showed her Archway Manor, and
That's a good start. That's a very good start.
it is, yeah.
What was it about her design or maybe her processes that you really gravitate towards, that you wanted to learn more from?
She's her confidence is just mind-boggling, and I love that because I can honestly say I wasn't a super confident person when I started. I loved flowers, it made me happy, blah blah blah. But now I'm like, yeah, no, I actually know what I'm doing, which is kind of fun. And so her confidence really drew me, but also her design style. She just puts flowers everywhere,
It's
and
like, oh, just put it here. Like there's like probably no thought process, but like you think, how did she create this? It's like, sometimes it just comes naturally.
exactly. And I just love that. I think, I put flowers on anything I can, and so does she. So we really kind of aligned in that. And yeah, in that sort of respect, it's quite similar, the design style and those kind of things.
What were some of the bigger takeaways you got from like doing those elaborate shoots down there where you were a lead designer and working with other florists that you haven't worked with? Because sometimes that can cause
Yeah.
potential, challenges, when you haven't worked with with this particular team, and there's different personalities, and we're all there for the same reason, but there are
Yeah.
going to be sometimes conflict.
Yeah. And you know what? Our team worked together beautifully. I was able actually to bring one of my girls from my shop here, Erin. If you ever go on our Instagram, you'll see Erin's face all over it. So Erin and I went down together. So that helped. I knew I had one person who I could, just look at and she knew what to do. Um, so that was great. But then also we had the rest of our team was there. I'd never met any of them. I'd kind of looked them up on social media just to see what their designs looked like. And it was just, hi, let's get together and get to designing. And it was really neat because we had people on our team who were quite new, just kind of learning. And then I had people who had done a lot of design before. So it was a matter of just figuring out, this is the scope of our work and you're going to be best for this. You're going to be best for this. And just really having the team work together. And it was neat because there was situations where, the designers with more experience were working with a designer that had less. So they were kind of teaching them. Not a ton different than kind of what I have in my store. Like there's 10 of us working here in the store. So we have some designers who are, they've been working for a long time, and then some who are really new, so that we kind of pair them up so they can learn from each other.
I love that, where there is this progression, and you spend a lot of time and effort into developing your team, because you're only as good as the people that you surround yourself with. And with my company, Kevin M Films, yes, my name is on the front, but there's a lot of people behind the scenes that help me out, whether it's through on the day of, or I sometimes have editors that come and help me out as well. And it's still like my fingerprints are all over everything, but it really forces you to really look at how you're communicating with your team. And so I'm curious to hear from you how you really figure out people, in the sense of like what areas are best for them to work in, like to be a great designer in florals. I mean, I'm curious to hear from your perspective
Well,
what it all takes.
yeah. So, well, being a floral designer there's lots of different there's different jobs you can do. Some of my staff, I actually had a lady who was a former dental assistant. So she was really good with tiny little detail work. So she would make our boutonnieres and corsages and our flower crowns and anything that was like teeny tiny, because she was used to that. And so
She's
that was
used to working with crowns.
nice. Yeah.
Sorry.
So no, I love that. We totally got her doing kind of that sort of stuff because that's her strength. And that was what she was used to. And that worked really well. Erin, who's worked with me, this 12 years now, actually, which is kind of amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, love Erin. Erin, she could literally do all of my jobs now, which is really awesome. But at the same time, like she and I often work together when we're designing. She can kind of read my mind, and so she knows what flower I need next and what to prep and that sort of thing. So she and I often work together, whether it's I'm making a bouquet and she's handing me the flowers, or I'm doing the same thing for her. So there's tons of teamwork with the two of us there. I have some people that I work with, and they can speak to anyone and they can say the right things. And so when I need somebody who can connect with a bride, they're the ones that I'm going to send up and say, okay, it's time to go present the bouquet. It's not always me, because I'm not the best with words. Sometimes I trip over my words and forget what to say. And,
Same here. That's why I have a
I'm better
podcast.
standing on a ladder stuffing flowers in. And so really playing up everybody's strengths.
Yeah, I love that. Now, speaking of brides, I want to go back to really, why we're here. And there's going to be a lot of brides and grooms too that listen to this. And I'm curious to hear from you, your process when it comes to someone inquiring on your website, and just walk me through the step-by-step process that you guide them through, from that inquiry to the big day
The big
where
thing.
they're now like enjoying like these amazing floral designs that are helping their Pinterest boards come to reality.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's actually it's pretty simple and straightforward. And every florist is different. This is my process, and every florist is slightly different. But this works for us. We have people, inquire via our website. That's the best place to inquire. Just because then we can get all your information, kind of a thing. Once we've got your inquiry, we'll take a look and we'll say, okay, what does that date look like? Because we do block off dates. We fill up really quickly. And we always just take people first come, first serve. We're not picky in other things.
Right.
It's like, okay, if you're here first, you got us. Um, so first thing we do is we make sure that we are available for their wedding date. Once we're available, we know we're going to set up a consultation. We either meet with them on Zoom or in person. I always love in person because florals are such a tangible thing. It's so much easier to talk about it face to face. But
You can bring a
we
bouquet and get free coffees.
exactly, yeah. We tend to have a lot of clients from out of town, so I use Zoom a lot of the time too. So once we've had our consultation, I get a ton of ideas when we have our consult. I'm going to ask, send me your Pinterest board. I want to see your ideas. I'm going to take a look at their wedding venue. I always get their photographer because I love to see what style they've chosen for photography. All of those little pieces, I find out as many of their vendors as I can, because then I can get a real picture in my mind of what they want their wedding to look like. And then from there, I take all that information and we chat about, when we chat in the consultation, we talk about bouquets, we talk about boutonnieres. Do you want flowers at your ceremony? Do you want centerpieces? And for our business, we don't have like a minimum or anything like that. I'm not going to say no to you if you only need a bouquet, because we do. We have lots of elopement couples who just need a bouquet and a boutonniere. But then we have couples they want everything, and we can do that too. So that's kind of fun. I get all their information and then I create a proposal for them. In the proposal, you get prices, you get pictures, you get descriptions. So you can really get a picture, basically, that I've got a picture of what you want.
Yeah.
And then from there, once they decide to book in, we kind of just put a pause on our stuff and say, okay, continue with your planning. And if they have a coordinator, their coordinator's usually involved in all this too. But once they've booked in, continue with your planning. We're going to reach out to you closer to your wedding date. Sometimes we need a venue visit. If it's a fairly large wedding, and we haven't been to the venue before, or even if we have and you want us to like chat with you, we can do a venue visit. We'll do a second consultation closer to the wedding date to confirm things, because every single person knows that stuff changes between the time you book it and your wedding date, right? You don't know the table numbers a year before, but maybe 2 months before the wedding, you should know how many tables you have. So we'll
You'd
do
hope
our
so.
second consult. We'll update everything. We get all our confirmations, and then day of the and we always, our final date is a month before. That's when we have to have everything finalized. We can't do any changes because that's when I've got to get all my flowers ordered. So on my end, I'm ordering flowers, I'm ordering containers, and making sure we have all the supplies. And that leaves me tons of time in case, say, one supplier doesn't have what I need. I can go to 3 other suppliers and I can make sure that no matter what, you're getting what you need. And that's why we cut off a month before, just so that we're safe, basically, and we can really get what we've promised. Yeah, and then day of the wedding, we show up, usually depending on the scope of the wedding. Again, sometimes we're very early in the morning, sometimes we're 2 or 3 hours before the wedding. It really depends on the scope of the work our team has to do. If we're in a ceiling, doing any kind of ceiling treatments, sometimes we even go the day before to get that done. And then, so wedding day comes and somebody, maybe not me, but one of my staff's delivering you your bouquet, and I'm probably on a ladder in your ceiling and
Hanging from somewhere, I'm sure.
yeah. And then a lot of the time we also, like after a ceremony, a lot of the time we will come back and transfer flowers from the ceremony to the reception. That's one thing that we offer that I think is just amazing for budgets and that sort of thing, because a lot of the time the flowers you use at your ceremony can be reused in the reception, repurposed in a slightly different way, and we can come back and we can do that for you. Your guests don't even know it has happened. They would not know they're the same flowers.
Yeah. Yeah. They're having a good time. They're like, oh wow, they got so many flowers.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like not knowing, it's like, no, these were the same ones from
They're the same
before,
ones,
but
they just look different. Yeah.
they're still alive and they still look amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I know you mentioned that you do custom proposals, and I do the same as well. I have a starting price on my website, but outside of that, it's really based on each individual couple that I meet with and their needs. I'm curious to know pricing wise. I know we talked before we pressed
Yeah.
record. It's like, is there any sensitive topics? It's like pricing. It's like, yeah, we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear from your perspective because information and education is so important. I think, and brides see a lot of numbers out there, and they're like, oh my god, it's like what is what is too much or what is realistic. I'm curious to hear from you as someone who's been in this for a couple years. What can brides and grooms expect as a range, perhaps for florals? And because I know that range can be very wide, but I'm curious to hear just a ballpark what they can expect from from you and even maybe like in general as a industry here in Alberta.
So flowers are expensive. That's That's what it is. They are literally a luxury product. No one has to have flowers. Every single flower that is at a wedding is because we want them there. And it's true. Like I can't say it in any other way. This is what it is. I want them there.
It's like video.
My own
I'm
wedding
a
had
luxury
so many
item.
flowers. So that's like the one biggest thing to remember. And as such, flowers are crazy expensive. And actually, since COVID, flowers have gotten crazy more expensive. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's going any other direction other than up, which sucks for all of us. Um, it really does. I still try and price things like I would have, like, when I first started, and I'll price it out and I'll be like, oh, I wish it was that much.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
But and then there's lots of factors that actually go into pricing florals. I've actually been told, we was at wedding MBA in Vegas last November, and one of the things I got told there at one of the courses is that flowers are one of the hardest things to price and the hardest things for couples to actually know the price of. And it's because so many factors go into the price of flowers. So the first thing would be the time of year. So if you're getting married at Valentine's Day, we just had it, your flowers are going to be 3 times as expensive as if you were getting married on the 23rd of February. And it's just because of supply and demand that plays such a huge factor into pricing. So that's one thing. Another example would be is if and this is like a crazy unexpected thing, is, for example, my own wedding date was on the same day that Meghan Markle got married. Didn't know that. I wanted peonies. Well, guess who bought all the peonies? She did. And so literally all the peonies coming out of Holland were 3 times as expensive because she'd bought most of them for her wedding. And how would I have known that when I picked my wedding day? Like, very crazy different factors will go into into pricing. So that's, date is a huge one. Time of year is a huge one. And seasonality of the flowers. So if you want flowers that are harder to get or only can be grown in a certain area, those flowers can be more expensive. And even just things like, I could show you 2 bouquets that are the same size. One bouquet might be $500, one bouquet might be 120, and it's just the different types of flowers that were used to make that bouquet. So
Right.
there's so many different little factors. And then one other thing is the skill of the designer that is making those flowers. So on average, every designer adds labor charges, which is to cover their own wages basically, and to
Yep.
cover the skill of their staff and training of their staff. Most people have about like a 35% kind of a labor charge. That's pretty normal, pretty standard. Some people will charge 20% labor. In the States, if you're going to someone like really fancy, their labor charge is like 90%. And they can get away with it because they're a really good
It's
designer and they're really well wanted.
yeah.
And it's, so many different little factors go into what's pricing, the size of the florals chosen, the time of year, so many little factors. So it's really hard to say, yeah, an average wedding is $3,000, $5,000, $30,000. It can be, there's just so many little things. And that's why we do custom proposals. So we can get you like an actual price.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought that up because this is something obviously, when you're thinking about florals, they're thinking, you know, growing up, you would go to like the local flower shop and flowers were always there, and you just say, oh, like, but you don't know like where those flowers came from. And as you mentioned, since the pandemic, things have changed, and we're not going to get political in this on this podcast, but things have changed even in the last couple of months here. And I know the relationship we have with vendors down in the US, it will affect us up here, just like it'll affect them down there if they're grabbing something from us from up here. So I'm curious, when you're sitting down with your couples, what are things you're perhaps suggesting to couples to do, on their own, like for their own research to think about when it comes to like their floral budget? Like, what are things that they can do that will bring, I guess, more information and more detailed, um,
Mhm.
uh, yeah, not requests, but just those little details, those finer details. Like there's so much information out there. What can couples do to help prepare themselves for meeting with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess one big thing is well, I mentioned earlier, you can absolutely plan to repurpose florals. That's a huge one. So if we can use your flowers again, that's great in terms of, and knowing, okay, hey, we can just move this here kind of a thing. That's great. Knowing what flowers are in season is something that is recommended in every single floral book, or magazine, or online, Wedding Wire, whatever. They always recommend it. They say, know what flowers are in season. And I actually have to say no to that one because we're in Alberta. Nothing is in season ever. We
We
live
got two seasons. There's construction and summer, right?
right. So, yes, there's local growers in the summer. And yes, we can access them when we can, but there's also hailstorms and that sort of thing. So, pretty much nothing in Alberta is ever guaranteed. In the winter, we're always our flowers have to come from somewhere every time. So we're ordering in. There's greenhouses in Vancouver. There's places in Holland. Our roses all come from Ecuador. You want protea, you got to go to South Africa. So flowers are coming from so many different places. So when they say, make sure that you're using flowers that are in season, because I tell you, I have so many couples that come in and they're like, we'd like seasonal flowers. Well, so would I. Um, so would I. But because there's so few things that are actually grown locally, just because of our climate, seasonal flowers isn't really a thing. Yes, it is more expensive if we're bringing things in from across the world as opposed to, Vancouver, definitely. But just that term seasonal flowers, it unfortunately doesn't super apply here.
Would you say that's one of the bigger misconceptions when it comes to wedding florals? Is
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
what would
Yeah.
be some other misconceptions that you see out there when it comes to
To
wedding florals? I know you mentioned about pricing, and there's a wide gamut on what that could entail. Or is there anything else that you've seen over the years?
I would say Pinterest. Pinterest is a wonderful, wonderful monster. Um, so it is amazing for so many getting ideas, seeing different color schemes, seeing what other people have done. But also, it's showing you weddings of people who have millions and millions of dollars to put towards their wedding. And unless you also have millions, if you do, great. Unless you
Let's
also have
talk.
millions of dollars to put towards your wedding, it's really hard to recreate some of those Pinterest looks. And that's, I think, one of the hardest things is because I have clients come in and they want to do all of these incredible things. And I'm like, I will do all of that. I've got the skills, I've got the talent, I've got the people, we can make it happen. We don't always have the budget. And it hurts my heart to be saying no a lot. And that's one of the things that Pinterest, obviously I don't just say no. I'm like, okay, we can do this instead. But that's really tough, is that we want to give them what they want, but sometimes those Pinterest dreams are just a little bit bigger than reality. And there's no way on Pinterest that they don't put prices. You have no idea. And so that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that people can afford the things they're seeing. Because I would say most of our population can't.
Yeah, no, and it's so true because I would say, what we see on social a lot of times, and even for me as a wedding professional, and I see some of the weddings that I would love to film and shoot, and I'm like, yeah, that's great, but they're also, these are like six-figure weddings, and they're bringing in like the best of the best, like the top 2%.
Yeah.
I'm not in the top 2%. I'm a great filmmaker. I'm not that good, but I
Yeah,
think I think what's that?
I think you are.
Oh, thank you. But I think that's why, again, one of the reasons why I started this podcast a couple of years ago was to have this local perspective and to hear from someone that has been in the weeds, I guess you could say,
Yeah,
for many years on, like, you know that Instagram versus reality,
yeah,
and it's not to be, a Debbie Downer here, but I think it is important to have those realistic expectations and to have those tough conversations at the beginning
yeah.
and be transparent, because there's nothing worse than to be on this high and feel like, oh yeah, this is going to be everything I imagine, and then to hear, that it's not going to be that, and to have to adjust your dreams and your aspirations from this wedding that you've been planning since you were 6 years old. You know, I think sometimes that can be tough to hear, but it is important.
It is tough. It's tough to say. Like, I don't enjoy it. It hurts. It's hard. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to sit in a consultation and try and sell something they can't afford. That's not cool, right? I would rather, let's be honest. Let's come up with something that we can do. But Pinterest can really be a bit of a monster.
It's a love-hate relationship.
It really is. Yeah.
What are some frequently asked questions that you get during these consultations, or even through perhaps the inquiry?
Yeah. Um, One, I've got actually to go along with the pricing, and I have a little example for it. Why are flowers so expensive is a question that I get quite often, honestly. Um,
Why are
and then
weddings expensive? That's, yeah,
that
yeah.
is a valid question too. But one of the things I was thinking about is like, okay, so amount of flowers. If you go into a flower shop and you buy a flower arrangement for about $100, right? It's like this: you spend $100, you get a flower arrangement. Then you want an archway that is 20 of those. No wonder flowers are so expensive.
Do the math, right?
You
Yeah.
need so many. It's just a math thing. Same with centerpieces, right? Centerpieces are like your little monster, because one centerpiece, but you have 20 tables. So you need 20 of them. So that's a question I get a ton of the time. What do I do with flowers afterwards is a really good question that I get, because especially for those larger weddings where we have a ton of beautiful flowers and our team comes to do takedown, and we literally have a trailer full of flowers that, what do we do with them? So one thing that we offer is we actually drop them off at hospice. I will take them, and I do this at no charge because it's a nice thing. And so we actually bring them back to our store. I redesign them into small little arrangements, and we bring them to the hospice here in Red Deer and drop them off so that they can give them to everybody in their rooms there.
Okay, that's
So
like the feel good story of,
I love
like, yeah, I love that. That's amazing. I had no idea that you did that, and I think that's so
So
cool
yeah,
to
if
hear
we
that.
ever have clients that don't want their flowers, that's exactly what we do with all of them. Is we'll redo them up so that they're just reasonable sized arrangements, so they're not getting like a crazy thing, and drop them off to hospice. Lots of people take them home. Lots of people want to preserve their flowers. There's lots of companies around. I don't have any local examples, but there's lots of companies around that'll preserve flowers. So if you want to save your bouquet and get it pressed or put it into resin or whatever, there's lots of companies that do that too.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
This is a good time to ask this question because before I jumped on here, I was on our Instagram account and asked, you know, any questions that people wanted to for me to ask you. And one of the questions was if you're going to be offering faux flowers too, like fake flowers. And I'm just curious to hear your take on, you know, faux flowers and yeah, I'll kind of leave that up to you.
Yeah. So we don't do faux flower weddings. That's one thing we don't do. I used to when I first started, but I always found that it didn't fulfill me in the right ways, and it's just not a route we want to go. However, we do a lot of large installations, and we'll do them for events, or we do them outside the front of our own store, or that kind of a thing. And for those, I'm happy to use faux flowers. We actually do like rentals of like artificial arrangements that we can, they go in a mall for a few months kind of a thing, or they go to an event for a few days, and we do a lot with artificial flowers for that. The other place that we sometimes use them is, so if we have a very large, say a wedding with an archway or something, the archway is really, really big and it's going to be a lot. To make it a little bit more budget friendly, sometimes we will tuck in some artificial flowers underneath your fresh flowers, just in there, just to add color, just to get them in there. We rent those out, so we make things a little bit more budget friendly. So you still get all the size. You just get those back to us afterwards. So that is like the one way we kind of incorporate using faux flowers. But in terms of doing bouquets, boutonnieres, those sorts of things, it's just not kind of the way our business runs to do those with artificials.
And as someone that like has no idea about like pricing, how do those two compare? Like, is it cheaper to go one way or the other? Or I guess it depends
Probably.
again, on so many factors.
It depends which ones you want. We try and bring in quite high quality artificials, faux flowers, so that you can't tell the difference as well. So in the end, they're actually more than the fresh. The thing that the one positive is, we are able to reuse them. So like I said, we do them as rentals sometimes, so that we get them back, kind of a thing, after the wedding. And that way, that kind of makes it a little bit less, right? Because we're just renting them out rather than fully selling them. But if you were to go to a florist and order all of your bouquets and things in artificial, it would cost you about the same as fresh, if not just a little bit more. um yeah, good thing
Okay,
is
no,
you can sell it afterwards if you've got somebody who's interested. So I guess you could recoup some money that way.
okay. Oh no, that's good
Yeah.
to know. Because I did a wedding last year, and the bride actually lives in Red Deer, but um, she's a recovering cancer survivor, and she had a double lung heart transplant, and so
Gosh.
she she actually uh, designed her own flowers because she couldn't have real flowers at her wedding, and I couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, if they're
so,
done well, you can't even tell.
yeah, no, they've definitely come a long way since.
They sure
I remember
have.
seeing my mother's like fake bouquet from like obviously she got married like long time ago, but I remember seeing her bouquet. It was fake back in the 90s, and like you could tell like it was just how florals have come over the years. It's incredible. And
It is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Let's fast forward to present time now. And so we just got through, well, you just got through Valentine's. I didn't get through Valentine's. I mean, it was nice, but nothing like what you florists have to go through. I'm curious to hear from you, like what life is like right now. Like, what is Calyx Floral Design is looking like right now? What is 2025 looking for you guys right now, and what you're really excited about?
Well, we're actually, this is my week of wedding consultations because we didn't do any last week. I think I have 15 brides that I'm meeting with this week. So there's a lot of talking, but I'm excited because it's fun. So we are very much in wedding booking season right now. So we've got a lot of 2025 brides chatting with us. We've got 2026 brides. I got an inquiry for 2027 the other day, and I was like, okay, not yet.
I
So
appreciate
early.
your enthusiasm, but like,
I'm like,
come back a little bit later.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're in wedding booking season, so that means, yeah, meeting with brides, putting quotes together, that sort of a thing. That's where we're at now. And then coming up mid March, we're actually heading up to Edmonton. We had a collaboration that we worked with a wholesaler florist supply last year, and part of our collaboration is that we get to teach at their education week. So I'm really excited. Erin and I are heading to Edmonton to teach a wedding design course for 2 days up in Edmonton. It's all sold out, so we're pretty pumped about that.
That's
So that should
exciting.
be fun. Yeah, we're gonna actually we've got, I think, 25-ish people coming to learn from us from this 2-day course. And we're going through everything from how to do consultations to making bouquets to we get to build a giant installation. We're really excited about that. And the other piece that that kind of ties in with that we've been really working on is we've actually just released our Calyx education program, which I'm pretty pumped about. It's a whole bunch of online courses where I get to use my teaching degree, where we are. See, Mom, I did it.
It's not just an expensive piece of paper now. I'm actually like utilizing it again.
So we've got a bunch of online courses that we've been recording. It's basically designed as like a subscription service where you get a new course every month, and all the courses you can choose, or you can choose them like one of kind of a thing, and you can learn how to make a bridal bouquet or learn how to make a boutonniere or how to make an arch piece. So we're pretty excited about that. Been doing a lot of recording for that.
Yeah, I imagine. Wow, that's a lot,
Yeah.
and that's so cool to hear that there's that education uh, out there now. How's that been for you going back to your roots?
Yeah. It's kind of
And
neat.
yeah,
Yeah, I've always loved teaching. I really did love it. I just love flowers more, so I found a way to marry that together, and it's been great. Yeah.
I love that. What are some trends you're seeing right now when it comes to weddings? You're having a lot of these consultations right now, and so I'm sure you're hearing and seeing, a bunch of Pinterest boards
Yes.
again. What are things you're seeing more and more often now, or requests from
Yeah.
couples these days?
So we're starting to see some really cool things. One trend I'm just like all over that I think is so fun is color blocking. So we're seeing, an arrangement that is done in yellow, orange, and red, but it's not yellow, orange, and red all mixed together. It's actually like one section of yellow, one section of orange, one
Okay.
section of red. We're separating our colors and really sort of chunking them out. I think it's really neat. Even having tables where one set of tables would be, yellow, one set orange, one set red, and having the florals match those colors. So maybe your table linen is orange, but your florals are also orange. So it's just bringing that color. I think it's really neat. It's a really strong trend. You could do it of course, with like softer wedding colors too. You could do blush blue, ivory, those kind of things as
Hmm.
well. But it's a really fun trend. We're seeing there's a new style. Well, not new, but it's really gaining momentum. It's called the brutalist style. Um, And it
Interesting.
really involves a lot of this color blocking, but it's really floral focused. It's heavy on the florals, and it's really artistic. And I love it. It's really neat. People are incorporating like strings of cherry tomatoes into their floral arrangements.
Those are expensive tomatoes now. Like your floral budget just went up.
The flowers are going to be the cheap part of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. You can pick them and you put them on your salad now.
Exactly. Build your own. So there's some really fun things. I haven't had a bride ask for those specific, nobody wants veggies in their centerpieces yet, but it'll happen. Um, we did actually get to experience a little bit of that in Orlando. Some of the tables that were designed there actually had a little bit of that in there too. It wasn't specifically my team, but I got to take a look at it. It was really neat. So that's kind of where I see things going. We're leaning away from greenery and leaning more into florals being, and if there's greenery, it's greenery in a chunk. It's a whole lot of greenery, not greenery smattered throughout. So it's quite neat. A really more artistic style is coming back for a lot of years. Florals were it was kind of they called it the Martha Stewart style, where it was just like a round ball of flowers kind of a thing.
Yeah.
and Martha Stewart kind of made that really popular. And a lot of the artisticness of florals kind of left with that sort of style, but it's really neat to see it coming back. And it's like it's about the specific placement of the certain flower and the way the angle of the bloom is turned, and it's really neat to see.
Do you get a lot of inspiration outside of the wedding industry?
Yeah, like home design is like
So
almost
on HGTV, like that's
yeah,
your like
yeah.
you're just binge watching. Yeah, this is for research, honey. This is
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there's like you look at kind of the way people are designing their homes and the color trends and the things you're seeing in their homes, and that actually trickles down into the wedding industry. It's a little bit behind what we see, but yeah, that's where a lot of it comes from.
and would you say as a whole, like Canada is behind the US when it comes to the trends, or are we always like who seems to be like the trendsetter right
Trends.
now?
I would honestly say I feel like Europe is the trendsetter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a lot of things start there and then find their way across the pond. But Canada has some, and especially Alberta has some magnificent floral designers.
I would
Um,
have to agree to that.
in
I'm talking
Calgary,
to one of them right now.
nah, in Calgary, we've got a lady who's been to like the World Cup of floral design, Lee Romanowski. She's absolutely insane. We've got Flowers by Janie in Calgary, and she is like she's in Florist Review magazine. Well, she's there today. Regularly she's in their magazines. She's won a ton of contests. Like we have some amazing floral designers. Lynn from Flower Artistry. Like these people are magnificent. So it's not so much just the States and Europe. It's like we're holding our own pretty good here.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that World Cup of like florals.
Yeah.
What's that all about? I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's really neat. It's literally a World Cup competition, and every country sends their top florist, and they have to make some pretty incredible designs. Like, and these are artistic designs. Like, this is amazing to watch. And then they're judged on criteria, lots of criteria that they're judged on: color, form, line, like very very sort of specific criteria with their designs. And yeah, you can be the World Cup winner.
It's like the Olympics for like florals.
Yeah, exactly. Floral Design Olympics.
I love it. I love it. What has been some of the more complicated floral designs you've done? Like some of the setups you've talked about, being on a ladder, probably half your lifetime there.
It's so true.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear maybe locally what are some of the more extravagant floral setups you've done.
We did last summer. Well, this was a ladder story. One of my favorite things that was really neat last summer is they'd incorporated disco balls into their wedding. So we were in a tent. There's a chandelier in the tent, and we created a sort of a hanging chandelier underneath it with these beautiful balls of baby's breath and disco balls. And so there was a whole bunch of different baby's breath balls and disco balls, and it just looks so neat. And we created our own chandelier that hung from that. So that was really, really fun, and just super neat looking.
That is so cool. You'll have to share some photos. Are there photos on your Instagram?
He'll be on our Instagram.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll
I
we'll
can put them
share
up on
your
our
handle at the end there. But
Yeah. Another one is down at the Banff Springs Hotel. We created an archway. It was a beautiful, just an arched archway, except it was 14 feet tall. And
of
it
course,
was so wide, we couldn't, like, big arm hug, couldn't get around it, like on each side.
oh my
It
god,
was so
I don't even want to know how much that costs. Like that sounds like my entire mortgage.
almost. Yeah, it was a 5-digit endeavor just for one item. Um,
But it looks great on photos. So I mean,
It
that's
was stunning. It was amazing. And it was such a, like, we had to build our own structure. So I love that, where we get to create our own structures to design on. So that was really, really neat. Last summer we made 6-foot trees. That was really, really fun. For centerpieces, she wanted, it was beautiful because we had florals underneath along the center of the table, and then on each table there was 2 giant trees, and they were just a glass vase, and then the whole top was made out of beautiful green leaves, and we actually made our own tree.
this is so cool. This is like Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
I also
I
really excited about it and when I'm talking about these things.
yeah, no, I get it, and obviously people, you know, if they're not following you already, they need to. I'd love to um get you to share like where people can find you because I, I'm gonna go to your Instagram again after this. I've been following you for years, but I need to go look at some of these because they just I can't. I'm trying to imagine it in my head, but you have to see it to believe it.
Yeah, to believe it, yeah. You also have to look for the ice cream cones, those were pretty good too, all florals.
Oh, ice cream, yes.
We post everything on our Instagram. It's at Calyx Floral Design, Calyx, Calyx Floral Design. That's where everything we post is. We're real Instagrammers. If you find us on TikTok, you'll see not very much. We're terrible at
It's like
that.
mine too. It's like, oh, Kevin posts like every couple months. It's like, yeah, just like keep my account
Yeah,
up there, I guess, for now.
active. That's about it. Yeah, yeah.
And
But our
what's your website?
calyxfloraldesign.ca is our website. There's lots of good stuff on there too. We actually blog every couple weeks. We blog, and so we're always putting up our real weddings. So if you actually want to see like not just you know, I'll be honest, Instagram gets the best of the best, but we blog all kinds of our weddings and all sorts of stuff that we do. So there's lots of fun stuff on there too.
I love that. And are you booked up for the rest of this year, or are you still? I know you got consultations this week. Above
Yeah,
and
we're
beyond this, like, are you still taking more work for this year?
Yeah, we are still taking. There are a few dates that are definitely full, and like I said before, we do first come first serve. So, yeah, we are still taking for the summer. So if you're needing a florist, feel free to reach out. Our inquiry form is on our website there, and
Awesome.
events and stuff too. We actually do a lot of events. So if it's more event related than wedding related, we often have more room for those because they often fall on weekdays.
And they typically probably have bigger budgets too.
Yeah, sometimes that happens.
You hope so, at least.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Travis, thank you so much for coming on and just letting us all into your world of florals. I think this is, I mean, I when I think of florals here in Alberta, you're definitely at the top of the list when it comes to the best of the best out there. And so, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you letting us in, and I think everyone needs to go to your Instagram account now and just like stalk your on there because there's just yeah. Any
Fun.
final thoughts before I let you go?
I just wanted to thank you so much for having me on. This has been so much fun, and I always love an opportunity to talk about flowers. You can see how it gets me going. I'm having a great time. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, and I can't wait to see you at some point. I'm sure this season.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely run into each other this summer.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again to Travis for coming on the podcast and sharing so much insight into the world of wedding florals. I think I learned a lot from you this last hour, and I hope everyone that's watching and listening to this episode got a lot out of this as well. If you want to hear and see more episodes like this, please subscribe and like the show. Your support means the world, and that's how I can get this show out to more and more folks just like yourselves. So until next time, take care.